I think the startup ecosystem has an almost cult-like relationship to successful founders. We study their stories, we listen for their pearls of wisdom, we try to understand what made them successful. But I think in many cases, we really don't know why they were successful. It could have been so many things. They have theories, but they could easily be wrong. However, when things go wrong, it's almost always clear what happened. So today, I want to dive into one such example and see what we can learn from it. Welcome to Feel the Boot, the science of startups. I'm your host, Lance Cottrell, and I'm here to help you navigate that nearly vertical learning curve you're going to encounter as you launch your business. I know what it's like, I've been there myself, and I've helped countless other founders along their journeys. Now, this episode is part of our series on founder insights, things you need to understand about the founder process. And you can see all the other episodes on this topic over there. For this episode, I interviewed Abby Sugar. She is, without question, one of the most impressive founders I've ever encountered, and every other person in the ecosystem that's talked to her seems to feel the same way. Despite that, her startup, PlayOut Apparel, didn't end well, but she's one of the few brave founders willing to publicly unpack exactly how things went down. I'll put her full bio down in the description. I think you'll find a lot of really useful insights that you can take away from our discussion. She talks about many of the unique problems that she encountered in her journey, as well as some that are far more common to many startup journeys, including issues with co-founders, market trends, and timing. Addie, welcome to Feel the Boot.
It's so great to be here, Lance. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we've been trying to schedule this conversation for a long time now, so I'm super excited that we were finally able to talk. And I wanted to have you on because I and all of the other people in my angel network who met you and talked to you when you were going out and doing fundraising for your startup were incredibly impressed with you. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of where that experience went and how things turned out for you, and then explore the lessons that we can take from that whole journey. So maybe we could start off by just a little bit about PlayOut.
Yeah, so I'll even start out with, how you just started this conversation of, I think it's even advantageous that it took us a little while to be able to connect, to have this conversation, because it allows more reflection, more understanding of what happened or processes in a startup's life, in an entrepreneur's life. And I think that I have even more insights maybe than when we first talked about having me on Feel the Boot a few months ago. So I'm really happy to be here and to be sharing that. For everyone else, I met Lance through the Founder Institute that I went through for my startup, PlayOut Apparel. And this was in January 2020, actually, which, how do you feel about the pandemic? I mean, it all feels like time is gone. I cannot believe it's now mid-2024. But I think that we first met through the Founder Institute initially when I was in the accelerator, and then reconnected about a year and a half later when I was out fundraising for PlayOut. Maybe I'm jumping the gun here. Maybe we didn't meet in Founder Institute, but it was definitely through that network.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure it was, and it's now long enough in the past, and that whole time was fuzzy. I'd have to go back and do some
time is not real.
Archaeology to dig out what exactly that history was.
Yeah, exactly. And so just to share, with your listeners, I was the founder and CEO of PlayOut Apparel, and PlayOut was sort of the gender equal apparel and community shopping destination. And it's funny because I have this pitch, it's so ingrained in me, even though I've moved on from PlayOut, but that's what happens. I mean, you should have your pitch so ingrained in you, right? When you're going out and raising money. And
you should be talking about it all the time.
Exactly. And you should be able to concisely and easily explain what it is, right? And so, the question is, what is gender equal apparel? Why is it necessary? And what we were building was, we were an e-commerce brand, But the vision was definitely to be more than that, to be a safe space, and to be the leader in Gen Z shopping habits. So all the data, which was true in 2020, 2021, 2022, is even more true now, is that 85% of Gen Z shops outside of their assigned gender, or is willing to disregard gender categories because clothing is clothing. They want to be comfortable, they want to express themselves. And so when we say gender equal apparel, it's not just unisex. It's not saying, here's a pair of shorts and it's one size, fits all, size 0 through 20, small, medium, large, etc. It's saying that, for gender equality, all gender expressions should be celebrated, should be valid. So we're not saying this is a men's shirt or a women's shirt, it's just a shirt. We're also, not saying that a man has to wear something that looks a certain way or a woman has to wear something that looks a certain way. We're saying this is a skirt. No matter what your gender identity or your gender expression is, choose what you want to wear. So, that's a little bit about the company. We started out designing underwear. And again, you say when you talk about body types, that's a hard thing to start with. But it was actually quite easy because we're not saying it's men's underwear or women's underwear. We're saying here's a pouch version, here's a flat front version. Everything is equally available in prints and colors. So it's not, pink is for this body type. Just shop your style, not your gender, was our approach. So we sold underwear. We expanded into swimwear, which was very much welcomed. And we also expanded into athleisure. So I went through the Founder Institute Startups Accelerator in 2020. It was the last in-person cohort before everything moved virtually. And then we had great success in that program. We'll get into what I learned as a founder, but doing tests, taking risks, and then decided I had an amazing team. I had built an amazing team, and so went out to fundraise in 2021, which was just pre-crypto winter and everything for our pre-seed. I'll let you ask questions.
So what was your experience of doing that sort of fundraising? Because this is not your classic kind of SaaS startup. It doesn't fit the mold of most of the investors out there, and especially for these sort of older white male cis het kind of angels, this is going to be a bit of a challenging topic.
Yes and no. I'll say no, it's not a challenging topic just because of who I am and what I was building, right? So, I think if you look at, and maybe this is getting a little bit too big picture, but you look at articles by underrepresented founders. You look at even people, I think that, I hate to say this, watch Shark Tank, right? You always have these questions of, do you invest in the single mom who is building this business, right? And there absolutely is something to be said for the grit and resiliency that's required to go out and do this. And so, I am cisgendered. I identify with my gender with the sex that I was assigned at birth. But I am part of the LGBTQ community. If I'm on a podcast and I don't say at one point that I'm really, really gay, then I've not represented myself properly. It always happens, right? So here, this is me saying that, right? So a queer female startup founder, and we know the statistics for female startup founders raising money. They have been improving, actually. Crunchbase and PitchBook just came out with more info. They've been improving for dual gender teams, one female founder with male co-founders. Unfortunately, for solo female founders or all female founded startup teams, it's still pretty dismal. And so we're talking, I was raising 2.5, 3 years ago. And so you're already looking at this underrepresented founder, bias. And then You are absolutely correct. I chose the absolutely hardest type of startup to raise money for. And there's also something to be said, we can get into this, about timing. So in the late 2000s, mid 2010s, there was a lot of investor fury and interest in direct-to-consumer companies. So Andy Dunn, who's the founder of Bonobos was acquired by Walmart in 2017. Andy was one of PlayOut's angel investors because he understood the industry, but he also knew people weren't investing at that time, right? You can look at things like the darlings of direct-to-consumer startups, such as Outdoor Voices, Ty Haney, sorry. You can look at things like, Bonobos and Warby Parker were the ones that started, really. But also these brands expanded beyond direct-to-consumer. And the vision that I was building also was omnichannel retail. And when I first started the company and was in the Founder Institute talking about omnichannel retail, meaning meeting your customer where they are, right? So combining a traditional wholesale business to business to consumer approach, retail approach, with your direct to consumer approach, people didn't know what the term omnichannel was outside of fashion and retail. And of course, I've been in the retail and fashion industry for 10 years at that point, and starting in 2006, 2007, Macy's, the Fashion Institute of Technology, professional education, all of the fashion schools were always talking about omnichannel retail. It's only in the past 2 to 3 years that online advertising has gotten much more expensive. The web has gotten crowded, getting eyeballs on your website, whether it's as a service provider or a product that you're trying to sell. It's really expensive, and it's hard to get those eyeballs. You're one website out of billions, right?
Do you think that was something that you could have or should have been able to sort of see as a trend that you would have needed to take into account?
The increasing cost of advertising online?
Yeah, the increasing cost of advertising and sort of the decreasing appetite for the direct-to-consumer models.
I think from an investor perspective, the decreasing appetite for direct-to-consumer I was aware of, but there's perhaps in every founder or startup entrepreneur ego involved saying, I understand that, but what I'm doing is valuable and good, and I'm going to find the right people, which I did. I raised close to $750,000 for our pre-seed. From a business and revenue perspective, I have learned a lot about the cost of advertising online and what it takes to get eyeballs online. And I don't know if I could have predicted it, but maybe, I hate saying this, but so much comes down to if you're funded or if you have available budget to do things differently, right? So even if you say, a lot of investors will say, well, what about organic marketing and advertising? And it's like, yes, seeding your product, whether it is a consumer app or it's a physical product, seeding it to micro influencers and getting the community excited about it. Unfortunately, because of the way that Facebook and Google have solidified and changed their revenue models, even going to micro influencers costs money. And so it's like, yeah, instead of paying $500 for an ad, you're paying $50 to a person to get it out there, but you need 10 of those people and you need to pay them $50. So it's still a budget. There's no such thing, I promise you, there's no such thing as organic marketing anymore. Even if you want something to go viral on TikTok, either, yes, you can create it yourself and you can hope that the gods bless you, the TikTok gods bless you in this way. Or
you can buy lottery tickets too.
Right, exactly. Or you partner with, instead of paying for direct ads, online people value the reputations of these influencers. So you're not paying for a direct ad, but you're paying an influencer, right? And maybe that influencer, your budget goes to pay for sponsored ads by those influencers, because then it has that influencer's name on it, introducing your brand, but it's still paying for ads. And, we all know that when you're scrolling on whatever social media platform, you're hardly seeing posts from your friends. You're seeing ads, right? Like, not even your friends. And so saying something like, we're going to go have all of our friends talk about it is fine, but there's no guarantee, especially when you're registered as a business account on these platforms. People are not seeing your organic posts because they want you to pay to promote it.
Right.
So in terms of fundraising, I think that I chose, as an underrepresented founder, I also chose the hardest product to launch and to fundraise with. Absolutely, 100%.
But nevertheless, you were able to get $750 in funding through this process. So what happened then?
Yes. So we raised pre-seed, I want to say it was 2021, with the vision to go and raise a seed round in 2022. I had a amazing team, and really this goes to a lot of learning that I've taken away in terms of co-founders and building a team, and also a little bit shiny object syndrome. What's inspiring to me is that my team was industry veterans, and that was impressive to investors. Unfortunately, them being industry veterans actually did not work in my favor. It did not work in my favor because they were not startup people. So my co-founder was the former director of creative production for Intermix, this luxury fashion house. They'd been in luxury fashion for 20 years, close to. And my COO was the former country CEO of H&M Mexico. So this brought me CMO design in my co-founder, and it brought me retail expertise and financials, et cetera. He and I shared the CFO management, right, of all of our CFO and CRO, if you will. Like, he and I worked together on this. And so that definitely in the beginning helped me with raising money. In the end, they did not understand we're not a big company with this big budget that you're used to working with. So here's an idea for a marketing plan and whatever, and the conversation would go, well, to do that correctly, it costs XYZ, and we don't have the funds to execute it with that imagery, with that whatever. And my answer as a startup founder was, I understand that, fucking figure it out. Like, we need to work together because we don't have those resources. And so it's having that awareness, which is something I'm taking forward, right, in meeting other startups for potential co-founders, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I've seen exactly the same thing frequently. Is people with the corporate background know how to do it correctly, and they've got this model for how to do it. And with a startup, you're always using chewing gum and baling wire and tying things together and getting creative and working out some squirrely way of doing it at 10% the price, just requires.
And excuses are not acceptable, right?
Yeah.
Like saying we can't do it the way that I want to do it or the way that I want it to look is an unacceptable answer. It's an excuse for I'm too lazy to figure this out. At least that's sort of my feeling about it, having gone through all of this frustration. My approach to the world is two things as a startup founder. One, I've said it before, I swear like a sailor, but is fucking figure it out. And two is always upgrade your problems. So if you are experiencing the same problems, you're not actually growing and building as a startup, as a person or whatever, right? And so if your problem is I don't know, like the minimum order quantities from the manufacturer have increased 2x, great. That means your new problem is increase your sell-through rate and your customer base, right? As opposed to you're just starting out, you're in the idea phase, and you don't even have a manufacturer, right? Like you've upgraded your problem. I think that that's a very simplified example, and you could probably give better ones for software companies. But those are the two main approaches that I take. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly seen companies that get sort of paralyzed by the prospect of success. Like, oh my God, if we get this many users, it's going to overload our systems and we're going to have trouble scaling. I'm like, that's the problem you want to be having.
That's the problem to have. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So back to your question. So I had this team. It wasn't just the three of us. We also had a team we had our manufacturer with the pre-seed funding. We had a digital marketing agency that we were working with. I don't regret spending the money on the digital marketing agency, because when you are a small startup, you can't do everything in-house, right? Unless you're saying, I'm raising $5 million and there's a budget to have that marketing in-house. But having a team of people that has someone that, does the Facebook ads and the Google ads and the Facebook and Instagram go together, Google ads, and the email marketing, right? Because that's three people, to have people that are experts in each of those areas. And if you have an agency, they have those people, right? As opposed to you needing to hire individuals that know what they're doing. Finding someone that can do every single one is sure, be a startup with a generalist, whatever, expensive or impossible, right? So we had manufacturers. We were manufacturing in Mexico at a woman-owned factory that hired LGBTQ people. So that was really amazing. They're great partners. The second was this agency. And then we had freelancers in-house, right? So digital artist for all of our content that we needed to be creating, because that's the other thing, is that social media is content hungry. It's expensive to constantly be creating this content. And we were really good about using the created assets in multiple ways. Really good, but you constantly need to be feeding it. And then a data analyst and a community brand ambassador manager, right? Like, so we had a team. So, okay, let's go. And I had won, in addition to the money I'd raised, I'd won a number of grants in 2021, I want to say. So a grant from Alibaba that they had done, I think with eBay, for $10,000, which when you're operating at the scale we were operating at, our monthly burn rate was about $45,000, which for a startup, totally reasonable. So $10,000 doesn't make a big dent in that, but we were one of, they awarded 50 grants, I think, we were chosen out of 12,000 applications. So that's what you get, right? We also were part of the Macy's workshop, which is their incubator for retail brands, making those connections. We were sold on Macy's.com. We were the first ever gender equal brand to be on Macy's.com, to be dual merchandised. So what that means is merchandising in retail is where you display and sell your goods, like what merchants it's sold under. So men's section or women's section. We were dual merchandised with the exact same product and the exact same images, because again, gender expression doesn't matter when you're wearing our clothes. So we were the first ever brand to be dual merchandised on Macy's.com in the men's and women's sections. You could find it both places without gender labels on our own copy and descriptions. So,
and was this a strategic initiative for these retailers, something that they were wanting to lean into?
Yes, absolutely. You know, I think that so then went to raise seed in 2022 is what this whole story is about. And the interesting thing is, you asked about raising money as a physical product, or even take it a step further, apparel. And I still believe, with the uncertainty in the markets, even tech investors are looking to diversify their portfolios. So you can also talk about, and we can get into it, are you investing in the product? Are you investing in the founder? Are you investing in the traction, right? Everyone has different things that they're thinking about. And so I most of my investors were tech investors, which is great because there's a lot more money available, first. But second, it's terrible because at the beginning of 2022 was the invasion of Ukraine and the Ukraine war. Soon after, or around the same time, you had the crypto crash. And so in 2022, at the very start of it, when I was going to go raise seed, it was like people were really worried about the global economy. And that's when, you know, we started seeing all these, I mean, yes, and this is still during the pandemic, right? So you still have the impact on the economy from the pandemic. As a brand, as an e-commerce brand starting in 2020, we did great during the pandemic because everyone was shopping online, and people still are. It accelerated that trend. But so then.
Well, and investment was on fire during that period too, right? Valuations were going up. It was insane. And so by the time you went from pre-seed to seed, the air was going out of that balloon.
Exactly. And people in Q1 2022, after the invasion of Ukraine, were like, well, we're waiting to see what happens. And then crypto crashed. And so then it's, well, we're waiting to see, you know, I've lost 50% of my crypto portfolio. I need that to recover before I make any investments. Talk to me in Q4, right? The issue is, when you're a startup, and maybe I kept going for too long, but the winds can change in 2 weeks, right? If you are out there pitching correctly, you can get a $200,000 investment, and that can change what your runway looks like in a month, right? So I got, during that time, the other issue was investors pulling back and reinvesting in existing portfolio companies to keep them afloat. Right? So that posed a challenge as well. And we can get into types of investors I'd target differently than what I did. But anyways, so this issue of runway is, you're raising money, the winds can change in 2 to 4 weeks. You keep going out on a limb, right? But when they said come back in Q4, we were going to run out of money in Q2, right? So it's like, not helpful. I got one of the best rejections ever from an investor that said, you know, your cultural moment is perfect, your team is impressive, your just fundraising timing is terrible. Like, we're not investing in new companies because we're keeping our old companies alive. It was a really great rejection. But then this brings me back to, okay, runway, right? And this brings me back to corporate backgrounds, which is, had a conversation with my co-founder where it was like, this is the reality. We need to cut these, you know, teams. And everyone was a freelancer, and we were working with a digital marketing agency, right? So let's cut the agency. We need to just batten down the hatches and do this ourselves. And my co-founder, coming from corporate, their response was, if we cut the marketing agency and we have to stop using these people, then we don't, how can I say this? We don't have, then we can't do the marketing. We can't do it. I can't do it without them, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, if we don't cut these things, we run out of money, and we don't have a company anyways. We can't do anything.
That's right. There will be nothing to sell if we keep spending money.
There will be nothing to pay people with if we keep spending this money, right? So I at one point took out a business loan that I personally guaranteed to give us 4 to 6 more weeks of runway. And the other thing about raising money, and the other thing that's a frustration, is that I do think severely impacts underrepresented founders the most, is what I like to call ghost money from fundraising. So you have a company in business, you know, maybe you're making revenue, maybe you're growing in other ways, right? But you're not profitable, right? Because who expects you to be?
Right.
But you're in operations while you're raising money. So every month you have your budget and you have your burn rate, you have the expenses you need to pay, and you're raising money, but you get a $25,000 check, and that goes to pay bills that you've been racking up because you're already in operations, as opposed to going out and raising a chunk of change for growth, to invest in the activities that are really going to get you to the next level, that are going to be a step above for your growth. And so I see it all the time. You know, it has convinced me. I think it's so hard, because who do investors invest in? What do investors invest in? If you have an idea stage thing and you don't have any traction, but maybe you're part of a privileged group that can go out and say, I need $2 million to build this, and then you have that seed money to launch. Whereas if you are in operations and building something because you need to show traction to investors, you're from an underrepresented group, you can't raise on an idea, because they say, well, we don't believe in this idea, show us the proof. So then you have to go out and you start being in operations, and then you get into this raising money to pay bills that exist, right?
Right. And no investor wants to do that, because they want to see the money going into growth rather than just funding survival.
Right. So, you know, who knows if this will change. I sort of made a promise to myself to not do an unfunded startup again. There has to be funding. That being said, I did do 3 months as a fractional COO role at an unfunded startup, where the founder was supposed to raise the money to make it happen, and that didn't happen. There's a lot of reasons for that, and then making a decision with myself, saying, do I want to carry this company? Because I know I have the lessons that I've learned. I have an incredibly supportive network. I also have an incredible warm connections network. If I do this, do I believe in this co-founder? Do I believe in this thing enough to carry it? Because they had tried. I said to them at the very beginning, raising money, and I'll say this to everyone listening, raising money is going to be one of the hardest things that you do. And their response was, well, I've had rejections before. I've heard no. And I was like, you don't understand. I did this for 18 months.
That's right. It's not 1 or 2 no's. It's
yeah. And after 5-6 weeks, they said, well, my network's not interested. And I was like, it took me 18 months to raise 750. Like, you don't say, oh, I have no one else to call because it's been 4 weeks, right? Without a check. Like, so I have lessons that I've learned, absolutely. But I also think one of the lessons that I'm struggling with is I do feel like I can do it all, right? Like, fucking figure it out. That's my motto. But I shouldn't, right? Just because I could take on this company and execute on it doesn't mean I should.
Sorry, I mean, you're effectively making a gigantic investment when you come onto that, and you do sort of need to think about it in the same way you would writing a large check, because you are basically.
Yeah.
So
your
what
check
was
is your time in your life?
So you're running out of runway. You're sort of conflicting with some of the co-founders. You're sort of debating, direction. Do you do sort of a radical rescaling or try to just keep making the thing work? So so how did that play out?
PlayOut Apparel. How did it play out? So I guess I'll just be radically honest. I don't know how much I think you talk about your health challenges and your inspiration on this podcast. I think that there's a lot of lip service paid to founder mental health that is just that. It's lip service. I don't know how to fix it. My father's a psychiatrist. I have a very high EQ. I consider myself like an armchair psychologist. I've never taken a psychology class in my life, but I absorbed everything from my parents. My dad's a psychiatrist. My mom's a neurologist, right? In the last 6 months of my fundraise, in the running out of runway, I was not okay. And I absolutely was suicidal at one point, and I was suicidal for 2 reasons. One is, whether you're a small company, the CEO of a small startup or the CEO of a Fortune 500, there is this, you're responsible for people being able to pay their rent or feed their children or whatever. So I felt that weight. I also absolutely did not have the support of my executive team, air quotes, which I would consider my co-founders, right? And so I mean, this goes to a lesson of knowing your co-founders, choosing your co-founders, or communication. I think that having gone through this, everyone should have couples therapy with their co-founder. So when I would look for that support and say to my co-founder, this is what I'm really stressed out about, their response was, if being CEO and raising money isn't the right job for you, we'll find someone else. And we started this conversation, Lance, by you saying how impressed you and your angel network were with me. I'm really good at my job. And it is absolutely a core talent of mine. If it goes back to communication, to EQ, to connecting with people, to building relationships. One of my superpowers is building relationships, right? And so that absolutely was not the case. It was a timing and situation and not having support, That's not the answer. And so that happened. So we were running. So that happened about 6 months before we ran out of runway, before we ran out of cash. And then what I took from that conversation, and this goes back to founder mental health, was deal with yourself. Pull yourself together and get it done. So we can talk about the isolation of being the CEO of a startup, or any CEO, right? So that was that. And then we got down, 3 months later to the conversation about we need to cut our monthly spending and the pushback that I got. And the other thing I learned was, and I had this conversation with a mentor of mine. My co-founder and my COO was 8 to 10 years older than me. My co-founder was 18, 19 years older than me. And they brought this, again, corporate experience, which was a shiny object to investors. Now I'm not 20, right? I was early 30s at the time, mid 30s even. And when I talked to this mentor of mine when we first met, she said, she was really impressed when my co-founder decided to join me because of their background. But I was the linchpin building and running this company. So what this works into, though, and I think that everyone it's a process, or you need to do the work on yourself as a founder. I deferred to my co-founders more than I should have, being the CEO, because they're older, more experienced. I trust their opinion of things. And also I was maybe afraid is too strong of a word, but I didn't stand up for what I wanted to do or what I saw needed to be done. So for example, my co-founder wanted to buy more inventory. And I was like, look, the question is, do we buy the inventory or do we pay for advertising? Because we can't have more inventory and then not have a way to sell it. And their response was, well, if we're designing a capsule collection of apparel, we need to expand the offerings so that people will buy the pants we've designed with the t-shirts. We never should have expanded beyond underwear and swim.
Just because the cash requirements of having the bigger portfolio.
Yeah, and we didn't have we had our target customer, we had our core customers, but we didn't have enough revenue from that core customer group yet to sustain expansion. So, now this is 3 months, 2 to 3 months before running out of runway. After having the conversation about not cutting expenses was when I said, okay, I'll take this loan out, because I'm still trying to raise money, because again, the winds can change in 2 weeks, right?
Right. One good meeting changes everything. Yeah.
And it's at this point that we can talk about, I had angel investors and micro VCs on my cap table. I did not have a big lead investor that I could go to and say, here's the reality of the runway. Can you float us a bridge, right? Like the angel investors were tapped out. They lost 50% of their savings from the crypto crash, right? So I didn't have that. And that's why I say, what type of investor are you going to, or are you getting funding from, right? So I took this loan out, and, the other thing was, when we were spending money on advertising, if we were spending $11,000 to $12,000 a month on advertising, we were seeing $15,000 in revenue, right? Like we were not generating sales, right? Except that eyeballs on the internet are expensive. And yes, we were making 15,000, but as I said, our burn rate was 40 to 45, right? Anyways, so we ran out of money. And it happens in startups, right?
It's the number one cause of startups going under is just hitting the end of the runway. And if you'd gotten more funding, you probably could have done something interesting, but you don't have any maneuver room anymore.
Right. So it was at this point in June that we ran out of runway, end of June. And my co-founder basically said, I had pivoted from raising 2 million seed to being like, we're going to raise a bridge. We're going to raise 250, 300,000 just to get us to Q4 or Q1 of the following year, when hopefully crypto, Ukraine, World War III, et cetera, will be different. Investors will be in a different place, right? So we run out of money because I was unable to raise this bridge. And my co-founder basically said, well, what do we need? We only need 300,000. I will get the money. I will be CEO. I have investors who will only invest if I am CEO. And I, made an assessment of the situation, because remember, I was suicidal and desperate, and because I had no support, because I was trying to keep this company afloat myself. And so either it was shut it down and walk away, or, okay, you think you can do this? Here, be my guest. And also I said, where were these investors 4 months ago? Because we're a team. We're building a company and a mission. It's not about one person being CEO or not. Where were these investors 4 months ago? We wouldn't be in this situation. And there was no answer. So I did a lot of internal work. If they are successful with raising money and taking this on and being successful, processing the loss of identity, processing the handing over of the company that then went on to be whatever. I kept my shares, right? Okay, you go raise money. The company survived 4 more months. And survived is a strong word. They were not able to raise money. And they were not able to raise money because they said the company was carrying too much debt. The company had $80,000 on a credit card that was used to purchase inventory. Like, there's startups that run multiple hundreds of thousands carrying debt, right? And the debt, it was a line item in the financial model. It's not, we're taking a $50,000 check to pay that. No. We're taking the $50,000 check to increase our revenue and grow our sales, and 5% of sales is going to the credit card bill every month, right? Whatever it is, it's just a budget item. So they didn't understand how to, because they were a designer, they were not a finance person. They didn't understand how to discuss the financial model and the finances and the projections, which I built, by the way. And also they said, the global economy is just terrible for raising money right now. And I was like, yeah, that's what I've been saying for 6 months. And then when I came back, so the reason I took the company back was because of these personally guaranteed loans. So if the company was to file for bankruptcy, I still would have to personally pay them back. And so the other thing is, this could be a separate conversation, but why do companies file for bankruptcy? It's kind of like a public announcement that you can't pay your debts, so you're asking somebody to step in and save you, whether that's another corporation to buy you or private investors. It's kind of like an announcement that you're on sale, right? As a tiny startup with no value outside of the valuation we've created by raising money and the inventory assets, not just us, any startup at this pre-seed stage, no one's going to acquire you. No one's going to whatever.
Right.
So
you don't look like an acqui-hire. You're not, doing deep tech or something.
Right. It's not advantageous in any way to declare bankruptcy. So I stepped in and I was like, I'll take the assets and I'll do what I can to pay off the debts, just, ghost running it. And came to discover it wasn't just, it was in a much worse state than when I had left it. There were multiple bills that had not been paid because there was no money, and those contracts, they were month to month, should have been walked away from in the first place.
So would you say that one of the lessons of this, it was radical cutbacks needed to happen much earlier?
Yes, absolutely. But then one of the lessons was self-awareness in what your limitations are and choosing co-founders. And one of the setbacks is your CEO, one of the lessons is your CEO, you make the decisions. So even if you're getting pushback and excuses, yes, a startup is different than a big Fortune 500, but you're building it with a co-founder. But if it's about cutting back or not cutting back to make the company survive, you're the CEO, you make the decision, take responsibility for those decisions, but ultimately stand up for yourself and do what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Which is hard
once you reach that point where you're at
when you're suicidal and depressed, right? So
For sure. And I think that's very common, that when people are getting into that situation, the end of the runway is coming up, the pressure is inconceivable, and you're beating yourself up more than anyone else is beating you up probably, and you're trying to carry everything yourself. I did a whole episode literally named My Worst Day as a Founder, and just kind of walking through one of those sort of dark moment of the soul situations. And I did it just because I think we need to talk about how rough these situations are, and having some kind of a support network around that can help you through that isn't the people you're butting heads with is incredibly important.
Yeah.
So what's next? What are you working on now?
So I've been doing a lot of consulting and advising, taking these lessons and teaching them or bringing awareness to other founders when they go out to fundraise. The other thing that I learned is truly my network invests in me. So I have not come across a company. I sort of evaluate, having dealt with investors for so long, pitched investors, won pitch competitions, etc. I evaluate pitches. I mentor for the Founder Institute, but I evaluate founders and their pitches, for better or worse, from the mindset of what an investor is looking for. And I've not come across one that this was a decision I had to make with the 3-month contract I had. Do I believe in this? If I'm assessing it as an investor, do I believe in this founder, or do I believe in this product enough to bring my network along, because they're going to invest in me and make this happen? And I would like to find that, or I will come up with my next thing, but I need a little time to recover. So I am always open to fractional work. As a startup founder, I bring not just the greater strategy and vision, but execution as well. Because in a startup, it's you got to get it done, right? So that's what I say differentiates me as a consultant. It's not just coming in saying you should do XYZ, but saying we should do XYZ. I will execute it for you. Because I can do all of these things. Now, should I do all of these things is the question.
So that's a whole nother one. But it's a really interesting point you talk about of your network, because reputation capital is so important and so easily spent. Yeah. And it's funny. Like I get it all the time. I'll say no to some founder that's asking for investment, and they're like, "Can you refer me to anyone else? Can you make an introduction?" And I don't sort of want to say it to their face, but hell no. The first question they're going to ask is, why didn't you invest?
Right. I mean, I think it's easy if it's a like you and I, right? You invest in software, right? And so you're not investing in a physical apparel product because you're not investing in physical, like that's easy.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. You're not even vaguely in my investment thesis, so
right.
You're right. Yeah, if that does make a difference. So if it's you're a wrong stage for me, I'd be happy to introduce you to someone who might invest at the right stage. But if I'm saying no for more fundamental reasons,
exactly.
But even just making that introduction, you want to be. I am very, very careful about who I endorse, because if they look at it and they're like, "What were you thinking bringing this person along?" They don't take my next call.
Right.
And it is, you're counting on, and you're only as good as the last recommendation you made. So you're always trying to shepherd that along. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on Feel the Boot and talking. I always feel like I could talk with you for hours and hours every time we get on a call, but I'm going to have to edit this and have to keep this under some control. But thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure as usual.
Thank you so much, Lance. I'm so grateful to have been able to do this conversation with you.
Thanks for watching this episode. I hope you took away some actionable insights from the conversation with Abby. And if you found it useful, please do the usual, like, subscribe, and ring that bell. It really helps the channel, as well as making sure that you will be alerted to new episodes when they come out. However, YouTube's algorithm is not great at that, so you probably also want to head over to feeltheboot.com and sign up for our newsletter, Boot Prints. In addition to getting notified of absolutely every episode that comes out, you also get access to my free members-only office hours, and that'll be explained in your welcome email. Till next time, ciao.